Assalamu alaikum. This is Tariq Khosa. I am the director of National Initiative Against Organized Crime and also the Chief Executive Officer of Center for Governance Research. Currently, we are holding a series of roundtable discussions around serious and organized crimes in Pakistan. And purpose of these discussions is basically to come up with a national strategy in dealing with these serious and organized crimes. We have seen, unfortunately, that we have been reactive, sensitive to a certain emerging crime and then responding to that. But an overarching, wholesome strategy is missing from the national scene. And so the part of this discussion today is to elicit the views of experts and panelists who have dealt with organized crime or reforms in this criminal justice sector. So therefore, we will be devoting to the solutions part, 3 to 5 solution aspects from each presenter, which will be consolidated and disseminated globally for our perspective, because we are also part of the global initiative against transnational organized crime, which is Geneva and Vienna based. We in Pakistan, as a national initiative against organized crime, started this project in November 2019. It's almost 2 years. We've been low-key holding discussions, bringing out policy briefs related with organized crimes, have been focusing so far on drug trafficking, on human trafficking and migrant smuggling, also cybercrime, which is a cross-cutting area in all aspects of crimes. We are now looking at the online child abuse also, and we are looking at illicit financial flows, which has been part of the concern of FATF. And so there's a nexus in this illicit financial flows and corruption in our society. That is also one area. And finally, we are also looking at gun running or illicit, weapons, which is the proliferation of weapons in our society. So all the panelists are welcome to either address in certain area, these 5 areas, or you can broadly, strategically come up with your overview and how do you feel should be a national strategy in dealing with these serious and organized crimes. So this is the intro part. It is a great honor for this CGR and NIOC to host this roundtable. And our Deputy Director, Syed Ijaz Hussain, is the moderator. He'll now take on and will be interacting with all the panelists. I would, again, at the outset, I'm very, very grateful to all those distinguished panelists who have spared their time to discuss this very, very important national issue that we are involved in. And hopefully you will be all champions of change and be part of our team. It is a collective work on behalf of civil society that we are undertaking as professionals. So that's from my side. And over to you, Dr. Ijaz Hussain, for moderation of this session. Ijaz, yeah.
So thank you very much for your opening remarks. And formally, I say welcome to all the participants and the speakers in this webinar on organized crime. So first of all, I would say this area is altogether very ignored, but very important. Just to give a glimpse of how important organized crime is for the society. I would say that these small arms and light weapons, although by name they sound very innocuous and very innocent, but they have killed more humans as compared to all the wars which occurred during recent times and even in the ancient times fought with swords. So it is so important that we should look at these areas. And first of all, I would like to invite Barrister Sarah Bilal. She is Executive Director of Project Pakistan. And
मेरा जाके बताओ उन्हें क्या आमिर साहब का डायरेक्टर
I would request her to share her point of view on organized crime in Pakistan, and especially she is also working on in the prisons reforms. So generally we recommend more punishments, but she is for humane treatment of prisoners. So how these two things will go together.
Thank you so much, sir, for the very generous introduction. Thank you so much to all the organizers for having us here. My name is Barrister Sara Bilal, and I am the executive director of an organization, a Pakistani civil society organization called Justice Project Pakistan. We are an organization that represents Pakistani prisoners facing the harshest punishments at home and abroad. And it is in this context today that I would like to speak about organized crimes through the lens of Pakistani migrant workers and their journey through our domestic system, seeking legal or in some cases illegal migration to mainly the Gulf corridor, because that's where our most busiest migration corridor is, and what their experience is like because of some of the lapses in regulation and some of while they are applying for migration or they're trying to emigrate, and then what happens to them because of these lapses, falling into the hands of organized crime cartels and then ending up in the Gulf under a foreign regime with very little to no consular assistance. And then their experience of going through trial, detention, trial and conviction, and serving out their sentences abroad. And again, I'd like to appreciate the opening remarks made, because it's very refreshing for us to be presenting in a situation where the focus is on providing concrete solutions. I think too often in Pakistan, sometimes, or at least in my area from civil society, we get bogged down in framing the problem and we don't spend enough time in thinking through strategic and practical recommendations that can guide the government and policymakers to actually bring a change. So I really appreciate that. So in terms of framing the problem, we all know that the Pakistani economy relies heavily on foreign remittances for economic stability and forex reserves. We also know that in the past year, in 2020, our foreign remittances have hit a record high of $23 billion. However, there is a disconnect between the benefit that Pakistani migrant workers provide to the state and the reliance, the financial reliance by the state on these workers, and the protections accorded to them to pursue legal migration. And once, if they do end up in trouble, how to gain less, to provide them consular assistance and bring them back home. The overall problems, we've issued 2 reports on the subject. One in March 2018, we wrote a joint report with Human Rights Watch and Justice Project Pakistan on the plight of Pakistanis on death row in Saudi Arabia. Primarily, they were convicted of drug trafficking charges. And so we investigated their cases, both in Pakistan and looked into their plight in Saudi prisons. That's on our website, and it's called Caught in a Web. And you can find the whole report online. It's not very long. We don't believe in writing very long, tedious reports. And the second one we did was in April with an expert organization called Equidem, which works primarily in the Gulf, but also now in South Asia, looking at making corporations more friendly, international corporations being aware of their human rights obligations to protect migrant workers that come and work for them. And that report, in that report, we looked at the framework, the regulatory framework that applies to Pakistani migrant workers domestically and abroad. And we looked at the problems and suggested recommendations there. That's also on the website that was released in April 2019. I'm going to talk about the Saudi example, not because we have an axe to grind with Saudi Arabia, but because it's been one of the most successful, it's been where we have the highest migration of Pakistani nationals. We have the highest prison population of Pakistani nationals, overseas Pakistanis, and it's an ally country. And we've also seen, because of our ongoing advocacy with this administration in particular, but especially with the bureaucracy of Ministry of Overseas Pakistanis, as well as MOFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that we've actually seen some very concrete gains in the last 2-3 years, some key issues that have been resolved, and some strategic decisions and treaties that have been signed that are going to cause, that bring a lot of relief. So in the Saudi example, I highlight that there more than half of Saudi Arabia's death row population, specifically 57% of Saudi Arabia's death row population is Pakistani, with 35% of those that are actually executed being Pakistani. These are primarily people that are Pakistanis that are seeking a better life for their families, but because of key gaps, such as unauthorized overseas employment promoters that are supposed to be regulated under the Bureau of Immigration's policy, but slip through these very glaring cracks. These migrant workers who are, sell everything to go and pursue a better life, come into contact, and we saw this in case after case after case. They come into contact through a friend in the village with some agent, sub-agent, sub-agent, sub-agent. So it's like 2 to 3 times removed from the regulatory framework. And they approach these workers. These workers have very little to no understanding of the immigration process. They're barely literate. They say, we'll make your passport, we'll get you the visa, and you'll go and earn a better living. However, during that time, a fair number of these, because of these unregulated overseas employment agents, sub-agents, they fall into drug cartels who have organized crime, drug traffickers, who then say, okay, your paperwork and your passports are all complete. You will come to Islamabad, or you will come to Peshawar, or you will come to Karachi from your village, and we will bring you here and we will help you board the flight. And once they come over, they are separated from their family members. They are forced to ingest drugs. We've investigated many cases in which they've been inadvertently drugged, taken out to dinner, and then drugged, and then and in some cases they've actually been abducted and held at gunpoint and told that their families and their children will be killed unless they traffic those drugs. Now, again, the second phase is when these people arrive at the airport in Pakistan. There needs to be better protections, both by the airlines and the airport authorities, as well as all of the partnering agencies, to spot these vulnerable prisoners. Because our goal often is, let's catch the perpetrator and let's punish them. But I don't need to lecture anybody here. You guys are much more senior than I am, and you know that victims of trafficking, there's methodologies in which you can spot them, and so can airlines, right? If they're being sent against the wills.
Barrister Sarah, may I request, please, you have mentioned this aspect of organized crime, that's human smuggling and trafficking. That's very important. That's one part of our assignment to the project we are doing. Could you please recommend some measures to prevent this sort of trafficking, or for the prosecution side?
Yeah.
Any of the procedures which can make the situation better?
Yes. So our number one recommendation is to increase government oversight over procedures for recruitment and monitoring of information passed through these informal networks, right? So you need to have better checks and stricter checks on the so-called Azad visas. We also, and this is there in some of the policy making, but we didn't find that it was being enforced at a level. So we would suggest mandatory attendance of pre-departure briefings for prospective migrants. And this, like I mentioned, is already under the immigration ordinance, but it needs to be enforced more widely. We also recommend amending the immigration ordinance and rules to include specific operating procedures for the handling of complaints against these overseas employment promoters, their sub-agents, and other groups of individuals for recruitment-related exploitation. And also to amend the immigration and ordinance and rules so that it has the authority to monitor and enforce recruitment-related protections over the unregulated intermediaries, including the sub-agents, tour operators, education consultants, etc. And to improve, finally, the outreach programs at airports in cities, towns, and especially in cities and towns with a high volume of labor migration. Once they get, let's say your national makes it onto the flight and then gets caught on the other side, and he's now thrown in jail in the GCC countries, the obligations on our state to protect their nationals, our constitution actually is extremely progressive. Article 4 of our constitution guarantees a Pakistani national the right to be treated in accordance with law, so with due process, wherever he may be. Those words are actually in Article 4, and it's an inalienable right. And what that means is that this constitutional right of a Pakistani national to be treated in accordance with the law travels with me and my passport as a Pakistani national wherever I may be. And my government is under a duty to protect my due process rights if they're being violated even in a foreign country. Now, one may ask, how on earth can our government interfere in the criminal justice system of another? And so here we're not asking for direct interference. Consular protection, which means making sure that you have a good relationship with the host countries, especially if they've signed the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, which is a bilateral treaty. Under which,
Sarah, I just want to ask, did you find any legal lacuna which we need to, fill that gap so that this illegal activity can be curtailed?
So for us, in terms of the government, we are asking for better regulatory oversight. The other thing that we have seen is that in cases in which the nationals were caught and imprisoned in the Gulf, if there was better consular assistance and provided to them, these nationals are often willing and able to name the agents that belong to these drug traffickers back home. And there needs to be better coordination between the government bodies within the government authorities within Pakistan to pursue charges against these named sub-agents. But the problem is that this person is sitting in a jail in, for example, Saudi, and our embassy needs to, our embassy officers and our CWAs need to be trained better on what to ask and how to coordinate the information that this national can actually provide to, for example, the FIA or the Ministry of Interior through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to pursue charges against them. In some cases, we've seen that the family members have brought this to the attention of the FIA or tried to file charges against these sub-agents who in some cases have been arrested but very easily released on bail because of a lack of coordination between the agencies here.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I just had one last thing. Apart from having a consular assistance policy by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a better coordination between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Overseas Ministry, and the Bureau of Immigration, the FIA, to actually control and have the free flow of information so that we can pursue these drug cartels back home. And number two, we always urge the government of Pakistan to pursue having prisoner transfer agreements, which, by the way, our government just signed with Saudi Arabia, that allows for these people to come home. Last year, we just saw 42 nationals, Pakistani nationals, returning from Sri Lanka, and they were also there for drug charges. Now, these people are sitting in Adyala jail since December of last year, and they provide an opportunity again for the FIA and other authorities to actually trace the networks that force them to traffic these drugs. So better coordination and better regulation is what we're.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for your views. And we are thankful because you were short of time and you had a meeting. So thank you. And definitely we will exchange our ideas later on sometime. Thank you. And may I now invite Barrister Pansota. Is Mr. Pansota online? Walaikum assalam.
Thank you very much
Okay,
for
Mr. Pansota.
allowing me to be part of this, I would say, August panel. And when I was about to come here and join, prior to me, Ms. Sara Bilal was speaking, one of my favorite lawyers, and the panel includes one of my favorite officers. So I am quite petrified as far as making submissions are concerned, but as far as making any recommendations, I would just say. But I will obviously briefly would like to first of all put, first of all, the most important statute to deal with organized crime. You see, when we talk about organized crime, at the moment, one of the most, I would say, chased organized crime in Pakistan at the moment is Anti-Terrorism Act. And you see, my first and fundamental problem with the ATC is that we beefed up that the act so much so as to include pretty much everything under the sun. Because you see, we are a country which relies heavily on special legislations as opposed to general legislations. And unfortunately, governments in the past and even in the present government, they feel if a special legislation is passed, that sort of reflects the intent of the government to go after a particular offense or go after a particular line of offenses, whereas it's not the case. I am one of those old school lawyers who believe that it is the general law which should always supersede the special law. You see, there is absolutely no problem with Pakistan Penal Code. It's absolutely no problem with Criminal Procedure Code. But in spite of that, we are, I use the term excessive legislation frenzy country, because we want to legislate more and more and more. Okay, that's fine. We were in a state in 1997 when there was a need to legislate on the anti-terrorism. I'll just speak about one issue and I will move on to a few other issues as well. So anti-terrorism legislation was obviously legislated and enacted. Now that was to deal specially with the cases of anti-terrorism in Pakistan. What eventually happened was that we started putting each and everything in that legislation. Even if the elections were taking place, a candidate would be picked up under Section 780A. And as most of the senior police officers in the panel would agree with me, that 80A was used as a deterrent by the governments to act against different individuals who were not liked by that particular government, not realizing that the purpose and the intent of that act was very different, which is what caused a lot of problems, because the Anti-Terrorism Act in itself was legislated to deal with hardcore criminals, people who plan and attack in an organized manner against the state, against the, many different aspects of the state. So it took us so many years until very recently when a judgment by the Honorable Supreme Court was passed, where it was said that it is only supposed to take care of instances where you see there is an element of जिसको हम दहशतगर्दी बोलते हैं और terrorism as such, so that this special statute, which was obviously implemented with a special purpose, should be implemented. Now you see, one has to see the legislative intent as well. When you pass a legislation, it is not supposed to cater for all situations. So Anti-Terrorism Act was supposed to cater for a particular situation, and that was dahshatgardi or anti-terrorism. Now we tried and included almost everything possibly under the sun. Okay, we move on. Recently, I was part of government's campaign, and Prime Minister, I must commend his efforts as far as passing anti-rape ordinance is concerned. I'm part of that special committee, which was part of that. Government had to pass an ordinance. The president had to pass an ordinance because there was no consensus on passing a particular legislation. Why? You see, we've got arguments for and both. We have a very sophisticated legislation already existing in form of Pakistan Penal Code, and the procedures under that legislation were clarified by a judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, where Salman Raja Sahab went to the court, and court declared a complete process. But even then, we felt the need to pass an ordinance to tackle this. You see, we are too busy, even at the state level, even at police level, in devising procedures, in devising new legislations, SOPs to deal with things which I believe, if you talk to any old school police officer, and some of them who are part of this August panel would agree with me, they do not require anything except proper policing. So you see, that's another argument that I would be making. So my first argument, if I was to sum it up, is we don't need more legislations to deal with organized crime. Organized crime is already dealt with at length by these ordinances, by these acts. And if you observe in Pakistan, it is very, very unfortunate that all the good legislations are either ordinances or were passed in the times of martial law or in military dictatorships, because that's the time when there are no pressures. So this is another sad part for somebody who believes in rule of law, who believes in democracy. I think this is also something that pinches me a lot, but nonetheless, the statutes exist. Secondly, I would like to talk about the judiciary. You see, now that with all these general statutes and special statutes, there is a acute dearth of judges taking up the matters in professional manner. And I'm at the moment talking about subordinate court judges. They have absolutely no idea at times how to deal with a particular crime, how to proceed in a manner which is prescribed under the constitution. Pakistani constitution is one of the few constitutions in the world which has almost each and every, or rather covers each and every situation. It also covers the situation to the extent that fair trial, due process, both in civil and criminal, have been guaranteed as a fundamental right, which is very rare in the world. We have fair trials. You see, if somebody is not given a fair trial, he or she is basically, they're under, they have the liberty to go and approach the Honorable High Court in terms of exercising that right. It is such an important right. But it is very unfortunate that I have to say, in my limited 19 years of experience, that when we appear before these courts, I've appeared before anti-terrorism courts, I've appeared before several other courts, special banking laws, they are not taken care of. And banking laws reminds me of another area of law that I have had the opportunity of practicing. That is also part of an organized crime, which is white collar crime, which is banking frauds, which are being dealt by the FIA and of course National Accountability Bureau as well, but mainly I'm referring to the FIA at the moment. So as far as that crime is concerned, there I have seen a serious dearth of quality investigations at the FIA level. You see, they have 1 or 2 investigating officers. They are deputed on almost all cases, which is practically impossible for them to conclude. So what happens is, at the end of the day, you have 200-300 cases being done and investigated by 1 or 2 people because they're specialists. You have not been able to train or raise specialists. People who have become specialists by virtue of their position in that department or acquired wisdom that they've got. But we don't have forensic specialists. We don't have specialists who are dealing with that investigation. Eventually, what happens is that when the matter goes to court, when the challan is filed, there are so many lacunas that even a dishonest judge or an honest judge can simply get away with that trial. So in the end, what happens is that the organized crime, when people are arrested, when people are investigated, they're challaned, eventually they are acquitted by the learned court. So this is another problem, with the serious problem with the investigation. I remember one of the investigating officers once speaking to me and said, Kiji, I will, in his local language, Kiji, main bag thode kol le aana hai. His bag investigation. His level of investigation was such that he was investigating banking offenses. So I think it is the seriousness. Then comes the prosecution stage, which is once again very important. I recently, in fact, yesterday, I was in Islamabad Law Court, and I was arguing a matter which related to Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, cybercrime, which is also one of the growing areas in Pakistan. And trust me, the law officer who was standing next to me had absolutely zero idea about the legislation itself. Now, I don't blame them. I don't have a problem with them if you're reasonably okay prepared, but the fact that you don't even have an idea that a magistrate is supposed to take care of these proceedings or not is what is seriously causing prejudice to the the interest of justice, prejudice to the rights of the accused, eventually what happens is किसी को इंसाफ नहीं मिलता. And I would say, you see, I've had the opportunity of observing police officers. My father was also being a police officer, so I've seen them very closely. At times, the role of police is exceptionally good, and you can't blame them. Their job is simply to collect evidence, investigate, and they are able to present it to the prosecution. But prosecution comes up with such an exceptionally perverse case that even the judge who wants to convict is left with no remedy but to acquit. And even if he convicts, in the end, what happens is that the high courts, they overturn. Now, then the serious third problem is the delay in decision of these trials. You see, when justice is delayed, is justice denied. We'd heard this maxim when we joined law, when this profession, but trust me, now that we are practicing, we've seriously encountered that once justice is denied in terms of delay in trial, there is no point in punishing that person after 6 years because it won't serve the purpose. In England, I remember once interacting with the ex-Chief Justice Asif Said Khosa, and he had a very good suggestion. He said, if you want to go for criminal trials, especially murder trials and anti-terrorism trials, you fix a date, maybe 7 months later or 6 months later, and then on that particular date, the trial must start and finish in 6 days. I mean, it is humanly impossible for an investigating officer to appear in so many trials and yet remember what he's supposed to testify. So they've got a standard testifying procedure, which they in the end follow, and they're left with absolutely no. And lastly, most importantly, I think our lower court judges have to be trained on the Constitution of Pakistan. It is very unfortunate that they are not aware of the basic provisions such as Article 4, which Sara also mentioned, then Article 9, which is right to life. Right to life has been given so many dimensions over the past few years. The other day, I was reading a judgment from a Sindh High Court, and it said that right to life in cases of proclaimed offenders can be restricted. Only right to life exists. All other rights go down the drain. So there are many other, concepts where you need specialized judges. And then I am also, with due respect to a lot of people, if a case is highlighted in the media and becomes important, it gets all the attention, and a lot of violation of Article 10 takes place. You see, an accused also has a right to be treated in accordance with law and a right to a fair trial. So you see, in Pakistan, cases become important. And my last observation would be that if you pick up important cases in Pakistan over the last 10 years, in all of these cases, there is one common thing: they've been convicted. Yet we've been unable to bring down the crime or the organized crime. Why? Because the 95% that you're not dealing with properly. People in this country, they do not have that fear of being convicted. They know they will get away, even if it's anti-terrorism, organized crime, banking offenses, anything. They have this inert feeling that we will hire the best lawyer, we will manage the police, and we will get away with it. This feeling has to be dispelled, which I believe is the last point that I wanted to make before I wanted to request you for any questions or any suggestions that you want from my side.
Just one comment. What I gathered out of your this discourse says that there is nothing seriously wrong with the law. It is actually its implementation at the investigation level and prosecution, etc., and downwards. Would you recommend some case study of any country where, all these prosecutions, they end up effectively in conviction or getting the justice for both the parties?
You see,
we can get benefit of.
That Pakistan at the moment is going through a serious reorientation as far as the accountability laws are concerned. One of the greatest concepts of mafias is derived from Italy, where they were the kings. So Italy was able to bring down this entire mafia culture by simply revamping their prosecution and their investigation procedures. What they did was that in that particular area where they would charge a particular gang or a godfather or whatever, they would appoint investigating officers from different areas to investigate them. You see, if crime has taken place in Lahore, I know that's a difficult thing to ask in Pakistan, but for important cases, you must have investigating officers from different areas, or maybe I would say if you can go that far as to bring officers from different provinces, because at least there is a chance of fair trial, fair investigation. That is my first suggestion. As far as the prosecution is concerned, I think we need to pay them well. We cannot allow them to simply show up in the morning and start taking money from the other side and say, okay, we will not oppose your bail application. We need to pay them well. We need to hire quality lawyers. and the government seriously needs to rethink about its policy of hiring their counsels, whether they are assistant advocate generals, whether they are prosecutors. These positions must be filled up with people who are willing to serve and people who are being paid well. So as far as curbing this crime is concerned, as far as the anti-terrorism is concerned, my suggestion would be that limit it only to anti-terrorism crime, so that there are just 2 or 3 trials in a day, and not that every Tom, Dick, and Harry should be tried under that law. And even if he's committed theft, the same is the case with immigration ordinance. If some of you have served in the FIA, we see for a fact that nobody in the immigration ordinance is tried because he has taken bribe from somebody to send somebody abroad. No, we always try and use FIA to take out extort that money or seek recovery of the money which he owes to you, because we don't believe in our civil procedures and PPC procedure. So I believe we must need to slot down everything. We must need to put everything in its own slot and stop legislating further. Legislation is not the cure. It is going to create a situation, I would say, by problems further.
So if you have time, may I ask the participants to ask any question if they have any? Okay. So I just want to thank you for your presence here, and
a pleasure. It was a
sparing
pleasure
so much of time. I know you are wearing so many hats, and it is always difficult to, find a space for the discussion. So thank you very much, and may I now invite Safi Pirzada sir. Mr. Pirzada was working as a program manager with the UNODC, and he has been heading that desk which deals with the police reforms. So my request would be to please focus on how can we bring some reforms in police with which they can handle these organized crime sort of things effectively. These may be in prevention or in the prosecution or any of the investigation related things. So over to Mr. Pirzada. Your mic is, I think, off.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I thank Tariq Khosasab as well for inviting me to this very august forum. And I'm already learning a lot from this opportunity. This is my first meeting at this platform, but I'll try to be, positively contributing to this forum in a way that something can be taken away from my presentation today. Well, I'll be very brief. Although it is really odd that I'll be speaking in front of so many technical experts and the experts from the police specifically, but still, as I've been encouraged and asked by the senior officers, so I'll be starting my presentation now. Well, I'll be presenting just 2 slides. The first slide is about some broad recommendations for the police, which is about its requirement of cooperation with other relevant departments. Please let me know if you can see my presentation. Jasab, is my presentation
yes, we
displayed
can
on your?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, the first slide is about some broad solution to tackle organized crimes, and it is all about cooperation, be it at the international level with the Interpol, or be it the state-to-state cooperation. The police and the other law enforcement agencies, they are required to be fully equipped and supported in this regard. Otherwise, it would be really hard to tackle or combat organized crimes. We know that although we find these crimes in our country, but these are linked to so many other countries. And in most of the cases, Pakistan is a transit place. So this cooperation is a must. And then another cooperation is at the national level, be it with, I'm focusing more on the police department, but it would cover definitely all other departments as well. National cooperation, be it with the Ministry of Defense, the airport security force come under it, Ministry of Narcotics, ANF, Ministry of Finance, Federal Board of Revenue, Ministry of Interior, and under the ministry there comes Islamabad Capital Territory Police, FIA, FC in KP and Balochistan, Railways Police, National Highways and Motorway Police, and Rangers. And the Ministry of Overseas Pakistanis and Human Resource Development, and last but not the least, the provincial government departments, especially police, levies, prosecution, excise and taxation. So it is all about cooperation, very organized and systemic cooperation between these institutions and ministries. Now I'll be coming solutions with regard to police reforms to combat organized crime. Well, there'll be bullet points, but each bullet point required a separate explanation, but I won't be going into the details. But to start with, first of all, the police is required to collect and share actionable intelligence. And this is not only required to be done by the police, but also with the by the other law enforcement agencies, as I described a while ago. But our intelligence required to be very strong, not only for investigation and stuff like this, but also for prevention. Point number two is systemic, updated, and regular training of all the institutions, specifically the police, around organized crime laws, prevention, operational tactics, investigation, and coordination. We know that these criminals who are, committing these crimes are very organized. They are very up to date. They are using cyber technology. They are using so many other channels, and they are improving day by day. So for that, our police and the other law enforcement departments are required to be updated accordingly, and so that they can deal with them proactively. The next point is the increase in the budget. Nothing can be achieved if the police and the other law enforcement agencies are not provided with the required budget, be it for prevention, investigation, or the infrastructural development. We see and we know, recently, a year ago, the serving Inspector General of Punjab, he shared with the media openly that they receive around 500 rupees per case if they divide their overall investigation budget on the number of cases. Even if they do not give budget to all the cases, even if they just give this budget to half or 25% of the cases, even then the amount is not sufficient, and it is simply insufficient. So there has to be a very, very, big change in the budget, increase in the budget, so that these crimes and other crimes, convention crime, could be tackled accordingly. I'll be moving to the next point, which is about legal framework. We know that our police department is not, the legal jurisdiction of the police department is not nationwide. It is provincially distributed. So what I see is a lacking in our legal framework of police, particularly, is that there is a huge problem when it comes to moving from one province to another, or from moving from one administrative area to the another. So they're required to be certain provisions or amendments in the law, so that the police can move swiftly and they can chase the criminals accordingly. Otherwise, at times it takes a lot of time to coordinate with other departments before moving ahead. In the meantime, the criminals escape. The other point is operational autonomy, and I think this is the core. This is I think, and it can come on the top as well. And operational autonomy is about depoliticization, independence, and neutrality of the police and all the other law enforcement agencies. And this is the point which is required to build public trust as well, on which I'll be talking a bit in the later part of this presentation. Well, my colleague from the law fraternity, and both the lawyers discussed the role of prosecution department. No doubt, it's really, really critical. And another area is of improved coordination between the police and the prosecution department. we see that there are again so many loopholes, there are so many budgetary constraints and technical expertise which are lacking in the prosecution department. So that is required to be improved so that a strong coordination can be built and both the department can work together. And since there are a lot of power with the law enforcement agencies, they can deprive human beings from their basic rights. So there should be strict accountability mechanism, not only from within the department, but also there should be some oversight mechanisms, as already given in the Police Order 2002 and in the laws of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, like KP Police Act 2017, or in Sindh as well. Although there is a variation in the composition of the accountability mechanisms, but still those mechanisms are there. I think Balochistan is the only province where there is no provision in the Police Act of 2011, Balochistan Police Act 2011. Otherwise, the provision for provincial accountability commissions are always there in the laws, but unfortunately those commissions have not been established, and they are required to be established so that the accountability can be ensured, and accountability would be another thing which would lead to win public trust and credibility of the institution. Well, another area which is required in the police, and I think in all the departments, which is of tenure security. And this is very much required with sustainability of policies, implementation of policies, learning from your experiences, and also it is linked with building expertise of police officers at different tiers. But unfortunately, what we see is that the tenure security is severely lacking at all levels in the police. In one of the researches published on the order of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, it was shared that the average tenure of a police chief or the IG police in Pakistan is less than a year, or around 9 to 10 months. Average tenure of DPOs is around 6 months, and average tenure of an SHO is around 4 months only. So in this case, nothing can be achieved if systems are not being implemented in a systematic way, in a sustained way, and expertise would also not be developed if people are transferred this frequently. I'm just going towards the end. I've already covered this point. Well, this, police or any other law enforcement agency, they can't work in isolation. They need to have the support from the general public so that they can collect actionable and reliable intelligence in a timely manner. But unfortunately, it is due to the lack of trust of the law enforcement agencies and overall criminal justice system, which include judiciary and prosecution as well. So people are not committed to come forward and give and be the witnesses or to provide proofs or evidences. They are very much reluctant. So their trust has to be built by taking the above actions, as I shared. Last but not the least, community mobilization. No matter how good our law enforcement agencies are, our police departments are, if the community is not fully mobilized to walk along with them, they won't be able to success. They won't be succeeding. So for this, community need to be mobilized, and mobilized in a way that they understand their role in combating organized crimes and the conventional crimes in their communities, in their provinces, and in the country overall. They need to understand their ground realities. They need to be made aware of their role, particularly as civilized citizens of this country. For that matter, academia can be mobilized so that the youth can be engaged. There are so many other platforms which can be utilized to mobilize the communities. There are so many civil society organizations and NGOs who are working at the ground level, who are working at the union council and village level. If we engage with them, if the police work with them, if the police train them and equip them with basic information and toolkits to make the people aware on these issues, that would be really helpful. And in that case, what I said earlier, timely and reliable and actionable intelligence could be made available to the police and the other law enforcement agency. Well, I'll be closing my presentation here because I know there is a time limitation. And, as I said, each of the above points is required a debate on its own. But this is what I wanted to present in a nutshell. Thank you very much once again for providing me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Syed Pirzada. And this was definitely useful overall situation of policing in Pakistan, and definitely relevant to this organized crime which we are discussing. Thank you for your time. And then now I invite Mr. Mansoor Qazi. I would say he is a very passionate, vocal, knowledgeable TV anchor, one of them which I have ever seen. He works for Capital TV in Islamabad, and he would speak about his experience, because this forum is about state and community and state and society response to organized crime. And as a citizen of Pakistan and as an anchor person, he would have very deep insight on these issues, and especially because this family has a policing background too. His father was an Inspector General of Police. So we would like to hear from him his views about organized crime in Pakistan. How can we prevent it, detect it, and ultimately go for some sort of sanction? So welcome, Mr. Mansoor Qazi.
Sir, thank you very much, Ji. I hope I'm audible, Ji.
Yes, you are. Quite good.
Firstly, sir, thank you. Thank you very much, Ji. I'm very grateful for the invite, especially from Tarek Khosa Saab, and to participate in this panel. There are a few things I really want to discuss. Already, the panelists, they have discussed, or what I have been talking a lot about it, tenures and everything. That's there. But I personally believe that organized crime groups always seek corrupt public officials, may it be executive, may it be law enforcement, may it be judicial roles, so that their criminal record activities in the black market, they can be avoided, or if not avoided, they can get early warnings. Their investigation and the prosecution in which they seems very successful, number one. Number two, once we talk about Pakistan and what is happening around, organized crime typically operates under police, under FIA, under law enforcement agencies. Abhi, Safi Pirzada Sahab, he was saying about the tenures and all that, and I am a very strong supporter of this thing, that if you will not give, he was talking about IGPs and all that, I would say the SHO all over Pakistan, his tenure is of 3 months. All over Pakistan. So you can easily understand that how much grip any station house officer can have of the area if his duration in that concerned police station is just for 3 months. Now we come up to what we are doing and how things are working out to be. I'm sure most of the people over here, they are from the police background and they know how it works. So we know there is a word, thane bikte hain, and that's like the basically a part of the organized crime and how they operate these things. And we also know the terminology which we use, special wala, which is a term for the plain clothes confidential constable of the police station who goes out and collect money. And from that, if I just give an example of how we have been talking about it, that what we need to do. Abhi society, sir, you were talking about society and state. I am very clear in this thing. Society and state response, once money and power is involved, then society becomes helpless. And we have witnessed this thing, that once the money and the power comes in, the society goes back and the priority goes somewhere else. Number two, the criminal justice system. Earlier, two barristers were talking about it. The criminal justice system, they are not delivering. The reason is the delays and weak prosecution. If there is no delays and the prosecution has worked their case, I don't think so that the criminal justice system, we are talking about it for the last 70 years, that criminal justice system is not working. But we are unable to even address one issue, which is let's bring a strong prosecution. let's stop going on the delays. But unfortunately, they are happening. Thirdly, the basic instinct of all this organized crime change is willing to talk about the structural change. I always say it's never about an Inspector General of Police or the Chief Secretary or the Secretary Interior or anyone. It's about the Thana which needs to be addressed. But unfortunately, we are least concerned, and all those politicians who say, Keji, we want to change that culture, unfortunately, they were lying to us. I'm sorry I'm using these words, but they were lying to us. They never wanted to change the structure of this whole entire phenomena, because this structure leads to mafia, and that's why it is happening. Last 2-3 things. Policing. We talk about policing, it's prevention. We need to understand at the grassroots level that policing is not that any incident has happened and now you are running after them. It's all about you prevent such incidents to happen in Pakistan, to happen in your city, in your district, in your provinces. But what we are relying on, or what we are seeing, incident happens and then they start running after it. And then they get hold of some individual or the culprits and they say, oh, what miracles we have done. So policing needs to understand that it should be prevention. Last 2 things. We deal with crime. I am also a banker, and I tell you what's happening. Banking cases get managed. Police gets managed. FIA gets managed. Courts gets managed. And once these things gets managed, everyone, I give you 3 examples in the last 3-4 months. There were bank frauds in which more than 100 million was involved. 100 million rupee was involved, more than that. And all those individuals who have done it, they say, it's okay, we'll go in jail for 3 to 6 months and we'll come out, at least we have got money. So their faith in this thing that nothing is going to happen, that's where the criminal justice and our judiciary should, that what they are doing. Lastly, a few weeks back, I did a program on illicit cigarettes. Sir, I was offered millions of rupees just to say that illicit cigarettes should be given an opportunity. These people, this mafia should be given an opportunity, that they should be allowed to sell the illicit cigarettes. And I was shocked that this is how things are working out in Pakistan. So my humble suggestion is that it's not required that any issue should be highlighted on media and then it becomes the focus of everyone. The law should take its course of action and the result should be seen on media. Whereas what we have seen over the last 2-3 decades, that any incident, their first priority is not police or law enforcement agencies, rather their first priority is call media. And that's which is wrong. That means that their trust level on the system, on the state, on the institutions, that's going away and they are depending on somewhere else, which is practically a wrong approach. So these are my humble suggestions. If that can be taken on, and that's like what we can do at a grassroots level. Sir, I am pissed off what is happening in, for instance, in police or bureaucracy, because now we cannot expect any sustainability in any policy. But at least what these guys can do, that they can retain their 1 downs or 2 downs for good, so that at least a policy should continue. That's all I want to say about it.
Oh, thank you very much, Mansoor. And that was what was expected of you. You spoke the truth and you have shown us the reality. What is actually talk of the town and what is claimed by other people. So that is actually, I mean, you are on the right path. You have identified the problem. But what do you think? What is the way out of this, all this mess? And
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, I would say there are 2-3 major things which needs to be done. There is a trust level. There is a trust level. People should trust our departments, and the trust can only be there if the right people are placed. But to place right people, I don't want to say that, but I really feel like saying it. No inspector general, no chief secretary can do that. And it's very unfortunate if on the postings of inspectors or patwaris, the top brass of the politicians or the government at the helm of the power, they are intervening, that means they don't want to change. So unless or until that mindset is there, things don't feel that good to be in the picture.
Thank you, Mansoor. Does any participant has any question for Mansoor? So thank you very much. Now I invite Mr. Shahid Iqbal. He is a banking specialist and likely to speak about money laundering and anti-money laundering procedures. Mr. Shahid Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Ejaz Hussain sir. Like Safi Pirzada, this is my first appearance on this forum. First of all, ji, Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Yesterday evening, I was told that I need to talk for a few minutes on illicit financial flows. In order to conceptualize illicit financial flows, we need to understand that these are basically outcome of illicit financing, which is used for illegal activities, and then funds generated from these activities are then transferred out of the country. So far as money laundering is concerned, money laundering is done both within the country and outside the borders. And the term illicit financial flows are purely spoken in relation to international, transfer of funds. These funds can be illegal by virtue of their origin, for example, stemming from some organized crime or utilization like deployment on terrorist activities, or the transfer of funds by themselves using illegal modes and typologies like the use of hawala, hundi, structuring of transactions, opening of fictitious accounts, using the method of bulk movement, and so on. So basically, with the introduction of e-channels, on one hand, connectivity of international financial system has increased, which promotes the economic growth of countries. But at the same time, due to tremendous speed of these funds, it has generated the global problem of illicit fund transfers. And these days, very, very, technical methods are being used for the illicit fund transfer across the borders, like trade-based money laundering, using, misinvoicing, thereafter establishment of shell companies, human trafficking, wire transfers. Wire transfers basically means using any electronic mode to transfer the funds. So these are the methods, and these methods are really very technical, and you need technical people to handle such transactions and investigate such transactions, because normally people don't having forensic accounting background, it has become difficult for them to trace such transactions. Now, what we can do to stop this thing? Answer is very easy. That is detect and deter cross-border frauds and offenses. Work with international community. Enhance the cooperation between international community. Placing special emphasis to check the designated non-financial business and professions. Because in Pakistan scenario, our banking sector is very well regulated by the State Bank of Pakistan. But problem lies with designated non-financial business and professions. In Anti-Money Laundering Act, in September 2020, these things are addressed, but implementation problem is there. And of course, monitoring the role of donor agencies. These are some of the measures which can be adopted to minimize the risk of cross-border financial flows. And how we can do this? Again, answer is simple, but difficult one. We can achieve these things by strengthening the implementation of our regulatory regime. We have very good regulatory regime. If we see the laws like Anti-Money Laundering Act, Anti-Terrorism Act, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, these are very comprehensive piece of laws. Similarly, we have State Bank of Pakistan's regulations, then FATF 40 recommendations, United Nations Security Council resolutions, specifically 1267, 1373, and these regulations and specifically UNCR's 1267, 1373, it has made obligatory for the financial system that while establishing relationship with the people, they need web scanning of the names of proscribed and designated persons and entities. But of course, their implementation is very important, right? So far as banking sector is concerned, I can assure you that State Bank of Pakistan is really doing hard to implement the regulations in light of recommendation 35 of FATF. And this thing is evident from the fact that in 2020, last year, State Bank imposed a penalty of 1,801 million rupees on banks, and till June this year, 497 million. This is huge penalty to the banks for the violation of AML regulatory regime. We need to follow these things in true letter and spirit. Reason being that recently FATF has changed the paradigm of mutual assessment, because previously the focus of FATF was on the technical aspects. During our mutual assessment meetings, they used to tell us, look, Pakistan, you need to add these things in your laws and your regulations, and we used to include those things in our regulatory regime. But now their focus is on the effectiveness. That is implementation of laws and regulations. Unless until in Pakistan, we will be having a very, very strong implementation of both laws and regulations, it will become difficult for us to go out of the gray list. Implementation is problem, and we need to basically enhance the implementation. This is the bottom line of the entire efforts of AML CFT. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shahid.
Pleasure, sir.
Thank you very much. It was very useful, especially for us, people who are not into these sort of things. I mean, very limited knowledge of all these illicit flows.
Yes,
and two things which you have mentioned, that all those regulations and laws have been amended. That's good. And the second thing is implementation, which is very important. And the other bodies, international bodies, require us to implement those laws as well, and they are monitoring it. Possibly with this strategy, hopefully this situation will improve. Thank you, and definitely you have added to our knowledge. And
Thank
now
you.
I want to request Dr. Aftab Rizvi Saab. He is Director, Rish Association. That's up.
Welcome, Dr. Aftab. Welcome. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, or sorry, good morning. I'm in Australia, so it's 5 p.m. here. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, I would like to say thanks for inviting me. A very productive session, and I learned a lot. You can imagine that being a scientist as well as the information security consultant, I have limited knowledge of these organized crimes, but the situation of the world is that everyone needs to know about organized crime and everyone needs to understand about the organized crimes, and which I had never thought 20 years ago. We are contributing in fighting cyber crimes and organized crimes now. So what I will do, if you don't mind, I would like to share my presentation here, which is not a long one, but it will probably set the scene what I want to do. Can you hear me? Can you see these slides?
Yes, Dr. We can see it. We can see it.
Okay, great. So basically, risk associates, this is and I think the topic I was given yesterday, last night when I spoke to Jafri Saab, and said that we're talking of society and state's response. Very interesting topic, and it let me, it gave me time to think about it. Why risk associates, why we are involved? Basically, we are a company who work in information security, and we are involved in 2004, have international posture, of course, and we are working with so many organizations. Could be software development houses, could be banking, could be fintech, and as well as compliance, and we work with the regulators as well. When we talk about any crime, obviously there is one we understand, and obviously I can't teach you guys, you're the most experts I've seen. I mean, not so many experts in the same room. I love that word MOM, means opportunity, and means an opportunity, and obviously why, motive. So motive is very clear. Things are that need to make money, and opportunity is very clear as well, that it is not local, opportunity is global. So most of the organized crime are for the reason that they want to do, make money out of the international clients, and internationally, wherever it works, wherever it is easier, doesn't matter, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Croatia, and so on. So we work in this domain, we work with banks and all of those things. And the most important thing we do is that we offer forensics, which is digital forensics. So basically the problems Shahid Saab talking about, the problems other barristers are talking about, yes, we have a problem. How to prove that this incident did happen. And the challenge is that when I talk of MOM, then the opportunity is very clear, but the means are very different now. Usual law enforcement and the police and the FIA, and they are so used to, and they are very good in the criminal dealing with the criminals who are on the street. They they go, they do their intelligence, they find out where they are, they try to find them and then deal with them. What happens if the criminals are not on the ground, or they are on the ground but they are hiding behind the computers, and that's the only thing they have access to? That's it where they fail. This is what I think everyone has highlighted, that we have a problem. We have a problem that how to find the technical solutions of these issues, how to investigate, how to come to the conclusions. And just to set the scene, obviously we are talking of, when we're talking of organized crimes, we are talking of a category of transnational, national or local grouping. Everyone has said that already. But the important point is that the usual crimes which you have, which we are very good in dealing with, whether it's a drug trafficking or migrant smuggling or human trafficking or money laundering or firearm, means are changed. It's not that someone is calling someone. It's not that someone is sending a paper or going to meet with someone and then you can just have a raid and bust them. The situation is changed. They have different communication methods. So we need to understand that aspect as well. But the modern crimes, modern organized crimes are also related to cyber, which is a very different ball game, which is a very important, for the country. We have seen this, that at the national level, we have a problem with the cyber security. They have a cyber terrorism, and cyber terrorism is politically motivated, politically driven, and there are state actors involved. Can you imagine that if I am someone who is sitting in Australia, and if someone is trying to hack my computer, I can assure you that if they are good enough, they will do it. But what happens if there is some state machinery behind it? Then it is impossible to say that any computer, any machine, any software is secure, which we have seen. We learned this every day, that what happens, whether it's US or Russia or China or Pakistan or anybody's computer or telephone, this is what is happening. So who can defend these? Who can investigate these and take it to the law enforcement agencies? That one thing which is we are not very good with, in terms of Pakistan, that white collar crimes, anti-money laundering stuff, which Shahid Saab already spoke about. And then obviously this is what we have to learn. I give you an example. Actually, I'm just, instead of going through this, which we hear every day, if I wanted to do one case study, from 2003 to 2006, I have been involved in one investigation, which was the fraud. And the fraud was about 13 to 18 million in the beginning. And the victims, they were victims. And in the second stage, they were up to $156 million were refunded to the victims. And that was on one of the online gaming site. What was opening, and obviously, please feel free to Google and find out the ultimate bet and absolute poker scenario. What was the story? That there was a poker site. They were enticing the players to come and play and gamble, of course. And the story was that the company was established in Costa Rica. They had offices in Canada. They have offices in Malta. They have offices in Antigua and Barbuda, US, Gibraltar, and Costa Rica. So you can see that the volume of the investigation, it's very different now. The computer systems were installed at various places. And to investigate this, you need to have access to computer systems. So that means you need to travel. And if you want to travel and you're dealing with organized crimes, first time ever in my life, when I traveled to Costa Rica, I was advised that I should hire some ex-Marines so that they can safeguard me. That was a crazy thing to hear. Anyway, then what we did, that we went there, we looked at their computers and tried to analyze their logs and come up with try to understand the problem. And the problem was that the computer application which we're using, where all the players were, there was a backdoor, and they were able to see all the cards. It was so big issue that even FBI got involved later, and because that was US citizens who were compromised. And the challenges we saw that it was so distributed that it was very difficult to get any information. So a lot of international cooperation was required. So this is one of the examples. And you see, this is, and a result of that, there was so much money involved that it resulted into illicit funds, it resulted into money laundering, it resulted into money, taking the money from US to Costa Rica, etc., and so on. So these are the challenges. You see, this is type of work we are talking about. This is what you're dealing with. Another case study I would like to discuss here very briefly. I don't want to take too much time, but just for the opening the minds. In Australia, AFP, Australian Federal Police, just did a Operation Ironside. This Operation Ironside charged 100 organized criminals. This operation took 3 years, and it required 4,000 AFP members and about 9,000 law enforcement officers from international law enforcement. And this was the first ever in the world, the technique which was used. And the technique, the problem we are having when I say that there are no new means and new opportunities, because we don't have access to that communication which the criminals have. Now they use encryption. You being in the law enforcement, you already know that you from here to here, from time to time, you hear that guys, we don't know how to crack Telegram, how to crack this WhatsApp, how to find the information from one of the clients. More recently, I saw news that one of the murder cases, they say we can't get information from one of the phones, which happens to be iPhone. So you see, these are the challenges we are dealing with, and this all goes into forensics and investigations. So iPhone, for example, you can't get the data if you don't know a password. It was a joke. I think it was a joke when a justice said that, go and find a hacker. That shows the level of understanding they have, that they have absolutely no clue what this means, what is hacking is, and what the information discovery is. Can you imagine that if you illegally attain some information, will it be admissible to the court of law? What is the chain of custody? What is the chain of how to take the evidence and make sure that it goes to the court of law? So basically, the challenge here was that the encrypted communication, and what Australian
may I request Dr. Rizvi, please just wind up in 1 or 2 minutes. We have 3 more speakers to go.
Okay, maybe it's boring or something, but I just wanted
to. No, it's not boring. Not okay. So, but
I'm just kidding.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, so basically the Operation Ironside was that Australian Federal Police, with the help of FBI, introduced new telephones which are being used by criminals, and they had no other software on this except for one application which is ANOM, and they used this to exchange the messages. And this is how our Operation Ironside was done. And basically, you can definitely look at this information, and you need to know. So basically, I'm saying that the level of expertise required to resolve some of the problems is pretty high, and it definitely requires international cooperation and local expertise in the technology. So when you asked me, last night when I asked what about the state and society's response, so what I thought that obviously the other speakers have said, international cooperation, local expertise, legislation to include modern challenges, increase awareness to the public. It is not a joke, but the mindset, I think Mansoor definitely said this very eloquently, that it's a very different norms. We have very different norms in Pakistan as opposed to anywhere in the world. The things which are considered very bad are considered normal. Anwar Masood ने जैसे मजाक में कहा था कि वो तो मज़ाहिया शायरी में बड़े दर्द दिल कहते हैं कि उर्दू क्या कहते थे, इंग्लिश द दी उर्दू दा जिथे लगदा उथे ला. It was not a joke. It was serious that this is the mentality we are getting into. And the second thing which is very important है, जो कि understand करना है कि लोगों की जो है वो change हो mindset, वो ये है कि जी अगर कोई corruption involve है जो कि main reason है, उसमें खाता है तो जी क्या हुआ, लगाता भी तो है. I think हमें as a government अगर आप कुछ करना चाहते हैं, increase the awareness of the public, try to tell them what is right and what is wrong, what should be acceptable. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aftab Rizvi Saab. It was very educative in the sense that these things are very innovative and very new to, especially to the settings in Pakistan. And these definitely bring some solution for some of our major problems. And you have introduced them, and definitely we will get benefit of all these things later on too, and take this agenda further. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
And may I request now Mr. Amar Nazir, Additional Director, FIA, and he will speak about role of digital currency in money laundering and terrorist financing.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, listening me, sir?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, first of all, I would
Go ahead.
like to thank you, all of you, sir. My seniors, my mentors are there. यहाँ पे मेरी डिस्कशन सूरज को चिराग दिखाने से ज्यादा नहीं होगी, sir. Although my topic was the use of digital currency in money laundering and terrorist financing. But sir, before coming to my topic, I would like to defend policing perspective, which has been discussed by the earlier speakers. Sir, यहाँ पे आपने एक चीज नोट की होगी कि we are very much clear as being a law enforcement officer that effective policing cannot be done without the involvement of society. We are 100% clear about. लेकिन सर ये एक अलमिया नहीं है कि हम एक क्रिटिसिज्म तो करते हैं लॉ एनफोर्समेंट के ऊपर. मुझे ये बताएं सर कि कितने लोग हैं जिन्होंने सोल्यूशन दिया है कि इफेक्टिव पुलिसिंग के लिए जनाब हम ये करने को तैयार हैं और FIA स्टेप अहेड हो, हम ये करेंगे. सर, क्रिटिसिज्म इज वेरी मच इजी टू डू. इट्स लाइक कि हमें, आपको भी पता है, ड्यू टू अ लैक ऑफ फंडिंग हमें एक तलवार दे दी जाती है and we have an objective to fight with the people who are equipped with AK-47. So sir, I would like to request all community members on this forum कि please come.
Ijazab, I think he has some internet problem. So you can go next.
Do you want to wait for him, or you can start your own views on cyber security issues?
I think I will start, and meanwhile, if he comes, then I'll give him the floor and he can answer. If you allow me.
Okay.
Okay, right.
So let's.
Please. Ijazab, please.
Amar, are you there?
No, Amir is out.
No, okay.
Again, he's back. Amir is back.
Sorry,
sir, I have a weak connection right now. May I allow to speak, sir?
Sure.
Sir, just come back to my original discussion point, which is the use of digital currency in money laundering and terrorist financing, sir. Sir, I would like to start with a practical case which we have done in August of this year. हमें एक सर फॉरेन एक इंफॉर्मेशन लीड मिली कि कुछ लोग हैं रिजाइडेड इन इस्लामाबाद जो कि डिजिटल करेंसी के थ्रू फॉरेन इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज के या हैंडलर्स को पेमेंट्स कर रहे हैं. वी स्टार्ट वर्किंग ऑन द टॉपिक सर. हमने सब्जेक्ट को आइडेंटिफाई कर लिया विद इन 2-3 days और उसके ऊपर सर्वेलेंस हमने बिठा दिया. सर, मैं कम टू द जो हमने एक्शन किया, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह वी कंडक्टेड अ सक्सेसफुल रेड एंड अरेस्टेड 2 accused फ्रॉम द क्राइम सीन. अप्रोक्सीमेटली 26 कंप्यूटर्स का नेटवर्क चल रहा था जो कि एनक्रिप्टेड नेटवर्क था, नंबर 1. नंबर 2, अप्रोक्सीमेटली 5 करोड़ रुपए की रिकवरी होती है सर वहाँ क्राइम सीन से. रिकवरी के अंदर तकरीबन 4 किलो सोना मिलता है. एंड एडिशन टू दैट ऑल अप्रोक्सीमेटली 55 करोड़ रुपए की सर हमें वहां से डिजिटल करेंसी हम सीज करते हैं. सर, यू कैन सी द पोटेंशियल ऑफ टेररिस्ट फाइनेंसिंग एज ऑफ टुडे. एक टूटे फूटे घर से इस तरह की चीजों का मिलना. When we have investigated, तो पता चला कि सर it was the personal accused were working for RAW and Mossad, sir. It was the sleeper cell, and they were financing handlers and executors throughout Pakistan. सर, इस चीज को जब हमने एक एज अ केस स्टडी लर्न किया कि आप क्या वजह है कि जो क्रिमिनल्स हैं दे आर स्विचिंग टुवर्ड्स डिजिटल मोड्स, सो बड़ा मजेदार सब्जेक्ट सामने आया. नंबर 1 कि सर इस वक्त डिजिटल करेंसी के ऊपर कोई एब्सोल्यूट कोई परफेक्ट लेजिस्लेशन ही एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती. हाउ यू विल डील विद दोस पीपल सर? नंबर 1. नंबर 2, इनक्रिप्टेड चैनल्स यूज हो रहे हैं सर. दुनिया के अंदर इनक्रिप्शन यूज करने के लिए लाइसेंसिंग होती है. यहाँ पे ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट सर हमारे पाकिस्तान टेलीकम्युनिकेशन अथॉरिटी वाले सो रहे हैं. हर बंदा जो है वो अपनी मर्जी के मुताबिक इनक्रिप्टेड चैनल्स यूज कर रहा है. हमें लॉ एनफोर्समेंट ऑफिसर्स के तौर पे या इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज के तौर पे उसको हम सर्वेलेंस उसको इंटरसेप्ट कर ही नहीं सकते कि इस चैनल के अंदर हो क्या रहा है. नंबर 3 सर, वीक एरिया जो हमारा इंटरनेशनल कोऑर्डिनेशन के हम कोई चीज यहाँ से रिक्वेस्ट एज बीइंग अ लॉ एनफोर्समेंट एजेंसी करते हैं तो उसको इंटरनेशनल फोरम्स जो हैं वो उसको रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं करते. उनके अल्टीमेट ऑब्जेक्टिव्स है सर, वो शायद चाह रहे हैं कि ये चीजें हों, जो मर्जी की चीज होती है वो प्रोवाइड कर दी जाती है, जो रिक्वायर्ड चीजें हैं वो प्रोवाइड नहीं की जाती. कंक्लूडिंग ऑल अबव सर, there is a dire need on 3 areas to do work with society, law enforcement agencies and seniors like you sir. Number 1, law enforcement अब local subject नहीं रहा sir. Now it's a trans-border subject. Now it's an international subject. We have to take initiatives as law enforcement officers कि हम इस international policing को हम local policing के तौर पे ना लें, हम policing को इंटरनेशनल पुलिसिंग के तौर पे ले. नंबर 1. नंबर 2 सर, सोसाइटी अब हमारी नेशनल सोसाइटी नहीं रह गई. नाउ इट बिकम एन इंटरनेशनल सोसाइटी एज वेल एज वी आर यूजिंग साइबर मीडिया. इसके ऊपर हमें सोसाइटी को आगे लेके आना है. रोल ये हो गया कि सर जब FIA या पुलिस का नाम लिया जाता है तो इंडीड सर ये एक थ्रेट फैक्टर है एक आम बंदे के लिए. How we can eliminate this fear factor from society. Seniors like you have to work on this subject, sir. It is a need of the time. And thirdly, sir, कि हमें बड़ी strong legis हमें स्टेट बैंक को सर इस फोरम के थ्रू सर मेरी रिक्वेस्ट है इस फोरम को यूज करते हुए हमें फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन लाइक स्टेट बैंक को, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस को ऑन बोर्ड लाना चाहिए ताकि ये जो यूज ऑफ डिजिटल करेंसी और ये जो डिजिटल मीडियम यूज हो रहा है टेररिस्ट फाइनेंसिंग के लिए सर, वेपन स्मगलिंग हो रही है इसके थ्रू, ड्रग्स आपको मिल रही है इसके थ्रू. मतलब हर बिजनेस जो एक इंडिविजुअल कर रहा था वो एक ऑर्गेनाइज्ड शक्ल के अंदर इसके ऊपर अवेलेबल है. इवन दो सर वी हैव स्टार्टेड अ प्रोजेक्ट व्हिच इज नेम्ड एज ऑपरेशन ब्लैक शीप अगेंस्ट द कल्प्रिट्स. आपका सर CDR भी फॉरेन इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज लोगों को यूज करते हुए पाकिस्तान में हमारे CDRs ले रहे हैं सर, हमारे फैमिली ट्रीज ले रहे हैं सर, हमारे फाइनेंशियल स्टेटस, हमारे बैंकिंग रिकॉर्ड्स ले रहे हैं, हमारी मूवमेंट्स लॉग कर रहे हैं. सर मुझे बताएं, मैं और आप तो आज सिक्योर ही नहीं है. सेम लाइक दैट अदर जनरल पब्लिक भी इसी तरह. मतलब तो इन चीजों के ऊपर सर मेरी काइंड रिक्वेस्ट है हमें सोसाइटी को भी ऑन बोर्ड लेना है सर. इनके बगैर हमारा चलना इम्पॉसिबल. सोसाइटी शुड कम फॉरवर्ड टू हेल्प अस किसी भी मीन्स में. वो हमें पॉलिसीज के मीन्स में लेकर आए सर, वो हमें रिसर्च के मीन्स में लेकर आए, हमें एकेडेमिया को ऑन बोर्ड लेकर आना है. हम सेकेंडली हम समझते हैं सर FIA के पास जो गिदड़ सिंह है वो ABC ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के पास ना चली जाए. ABC समझती है जो हमारे पास गिदड़ सिंह है वो FIA के पास ना चली जाए. सर हमें तमाम इंस्टीट्यूशंस को ऑन बोर्ड लेकर आना है, तभी ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम को हम सक्सेसफुली कम्बैट कर सकते हैं without this with the help of society as well. Otherwise sir हम इसी तरह करते रहेंगे. We should be the part of solution either to be the part of problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amar. It was a very useful presentation and very threatening too, because some of people like me who are not updated on technology issues and crime committed through technology. So we are not aware of these things. So maybe pray to all those, conspiracies which are going on otherwise. Thank you. And if possible, please write 2 pages and send it to me. Thank you very much. Yes, Amar Jafi Saab, you can start.
Thank you, Amaji. Today, I'm really thankful to the organizers of this event to organize this wonderful talk. And Ijaz Sahab, I will coin a new word today, that is cyber organized crimes. I am trying to link organized crime with cyber now. I am a former Additional Director General FIA, and currently I am in the initiative of digitalizing Pakistan. Thank you. Next, please. There has been a history of development of societies for the last thousands of years and corresponding increase in organized crimes. If I go back, I see a law in 1860 by the then British government that was Anti-Thuggy Act. Look at the year 1860, Anti-Thuggy Act. What was that? To combat the thugs of that time, the people who fleece the people who deprive the people of their hard-earned money. So if in 1860, this crime was there, I'm sure that today this crime has taken the form of the situation we are talking. The speakers before me have made my job very easy, and I'll be very short, because I think they have nicely explained the linkages between the crime, the law, the civil society, and all factors. So if we see the industrial revolution, the first industrial revolution, we find that the entire population of Europe came to London. Ijaz Sahab, I think you must be knowing about it, that the word constable is the product of industrial revolution. That's why they call it chief constable in UK. The street lights of London is the product of industrial revolution, because before that there was no street light on London. So we find a relationship between the development of societies and the corresponding increase of organized crime. Next, please. We had internet. Today we have internet, but tomorrow there will be totally different internet. I think it is very difficult for us to understand the power of internet today. That's what the speakers from since in morning are saying about it. But I'm sure that the internet of tomorrow will not be in our comprehension and understanding if we do not understand the power of internet today. Next, please. Cyber criminals and their increasing interest to understand artificial intelligence, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, let's say Internet of Things and cyber space. Why they are trying to understand it? Actually, they have established the research and development centers to understand it, because they are trying to grab money from our economic and social platforms. So this is a very dangerous threat. The most latest technology, the most powerful technology is available to the criminals from the shelf, and they have the money. They can use that money and they can buy it. Whereas our government organizations, our institutions, they are money constraints. So it's a competition now between the cyber criminals and the organizations trying to combat these crimes. Next, please. There are established linkages. There is no two opinions about it. And close working coordination between the international criminals. And cyberspace is providing an enabling environment to them. This platform was not there 10 years before, 20 years before. But today it's available to them, and they are taking the maximum advantage of it. They are using the cyberspace for the same purpose we are using it. The only difference is its legal and illegal use. Next, please. Forensic evidence. I think Amin Nazir nicely talked about it. It's not only available for the cyber crimes, it's available today for non-cyber crimes. we immediately need to build the capacity of FIA, police, the first responders of these crimes to understand the availability of this forensic evidence. If a car is stolen, the forensic evidence is available in cameras, in a telephone system, in number of technical gadgetry we have around us. So our traditional police, the first responder of crime, is not trained enough to understand how to get these evidences. So they are now dependent on, let's say, Safe City, they are dependent on intelligence services, they are dependent on so many organizations. So we need a framework in which the rapid response can be provided to the law enforcement as an entity, not as organizations. Next, please. We need to immediately establish linkages with international efforts. I think I have a short of time, otherwise I would have gone into detail that World Economic Forum is providing it, what Interpol is providing it, what international organizations are providing it. And this information is available on a click of a button, provided you know where and how to click. Next, please. In the end, I'll give only a few recommendations. Next, please. My first recommendation would be capacity building of FIA, police, and other organizational law enforcement agencies dealing with organized crimes. When I say capacity building, it does not mean the traditional capacity building. It means capacity building to help them to work together. Right now, our ministries are working in silos, our regulators are working in silos, our banks are working in silos, our police, our FIA, they're all working in silos. As Amin Nazir pointed out, everyone is trying to take the lead. But I fully understand, because I've spent decades of my life in dealing with this situation, that unless they will not work together under a one command and control system, I think it will be very difficult to combat the organized criminals in cyberspace. Yes, in the traditional world affairs, they could have been, because our police is very smart. But now, when every evidence is on cyber, they are using different tools, techniques of cyber. It's very important that all these organizations must be trained immediately in emergency. Next, please. We need to establish a fast-track working linkages. There should be a national command and control center that whenever there's an organized crime activity, it should be informed immediately to the concerned stakeholder. And in different cases, for example, in drug trafficking, there'll be different stakeholder. In human trafficking, there'll be different stakeholder. In street crime, there'll be different stakeholder. But all these small pieces of the crimes are it's very difficult to establish linkages. We need to immediately handle the escalating situation of organized crime using cyberspace. You know, escalating situation arises when there is no response from the law enforcement, or they are waiting for each other to respond to the situation. We have seen number of incidences in which the escalation is taking place and we just feel helpless before these escalations. I would request FIA to take the lead, because they are the lead agency in combating cyber crimes, because it is their mandate. And Amir, as you rightly said, civil society, particularly, I can assure about my organization that we'll be there, and we'll be there on a one call notice. Next, please. This is my last recommendation, and it is my recommendation to this forum, to Amir Nazir, to everybody listening to me. We must organize a national dialogue on cyber organized crimes. And the tentative date I'm suggesting is December 2021. This dialogue must be taken place by all stakeholders. Once I say all stakeholders, it means ministry, it means PTA, it means intelligence services, it means police, it means FIA, everyone who's dealing with the organized crimes. I thank you all for giving me patient listening. And this is only tip of the iceberg, which I could say in this short time. And I'll be available for any support and any session in this regard. Thank you, Ijaz sahab, for giving the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Amar Jafi Saab. Any question from Jafi Saab, from the participants? No. Thank you very much, Jafi Saab, for all the arrangements you have made, and especially this presentation too. Yes, we must be ready for all those technologies, but that remains all the time during evolution. Once we joined the service, there were some imperatives. We were moving forward, and even now at this. Jafi Saab?
जी बताइए जी please.
Okay. So yeah, this requirement for new technology and new methods of working and all these things, they remain current all the time whenever you place yourself in history. So those requirements were there. Technologies change, we adopt, bring more technology, but our issues are not solved. That is a fact. The major issue is human beings with which we are working. So ultimately they matter, and we have to, work on our human resources and the society. If they can be improved in some way, the whole system will improve automatically. With this remark, I thank all the participants and all the presenters who have been here.
Ijaz sahab, I think Rukhsar Kawal has a question. He said in the
Yes.
Rukhsar Kawal, do you have a question? Yeah, please. Your voice is not clear.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can.
Yes, please, Rukhsar.
Okay, I am Rukhsar Kamal, current General Secretary of Federal Cabinet Youth Parliament, and our aim is to empower youth all across the country. And I personally belong to Gujranwala, and when it comes to organized crime, we cannot ignore the fact that Gujranwala area is very sensitive regarding human trafficking, especially of the youth, including minors too, who have their economic dreams and they want to fulfill that. And state do not really ensure their human rights surety when they are outside the territory of Pakistan. So I have questions for three speakers. You may answer individually. First, I have a question for Director Amir Nazir. That most of the youth in my area is hopeless about this network crime, which is very least data available. Is there any current structure or plan regarding this particular form FIA is conducting? Because we hardly either these are villages, towns, or cities. So I would like to have your take, Mr. Amir Nazir, and then the respective speakers.
Well, Rukhsar, as far as your question is concerned, actually due to noise, I can't hear properly. Is it के network crime को FIA कैसे combat कर रहा है या strategy क्या है? Is it yes or no?
Yeah, exactly. Especially regarding Gujranwala.
अच्छा. For your information, actually, we have a specialized unit which is called Cyber Crime Wing. Cyber Crime Wing का purpose जो है वो technology oriented crimes को ही combat करना है throughout Pakistan. Or interestingly, we have presence in your region, Gujranwala as well. Because due to the involvement of technology, हमने किया ये है कि लोगों को एक friendly interface provide किया है, which is available as a portal on the website of FIA, which is www.fia.gov.pk, and it is available at the website of cybercrime, www.nr3c.gov.pk. So you can go on the website and just launch your complaint from anywhere in Pakistan, even if you are the resident of federal tribal areas. और within 2-3 days, respective जो आपका region है, जो nearby आपका एक थाना होगा हमारा साइबर क्राइम का, वहां पे वो कंप्लेंट चली जाती है और फर्दर जो है वो प्रोसेस होती है, आपको बुलाया जाता है. अब यहाँ पे एक सवाल होता है कि अगर फेसबुक, गूगल और ये सोशल मीडियाज के जितने भी प्लेटफॉर्म हैं ये ब्रॉड है, यूएस पड़े हुए हैं. हाँ, हमें जैसे ही इंफॉर्मेशन आती है हम प्रॉम्प्टली एक्शन तो ले लेते हैं, लेकिन हम हुने मिन्नत हो जाते हैं इंटरनेशनल कॉर्पोरेशन के. जब तक वहां से इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं आती हम कल्प्रिट तक नहीं पहुंच सकते. ये एक अलमिया है. बट गवर्नमेंट इज ट्राइंग कि गूगल और बाकी जो इंटरनेशनल फोरम्स हैं इनके ऑफिसेज अंडर द कंप्लायंस ऑफ प्रिवेंशन ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्राइम एक्ट पाकिस्तान में बनाए जाएं ताकि इंफॉर्मेशन शेयरिंग जो है वो 24/7 बेसिस पे हो. एंड होपली जब ये चीजें बन गई तो इंशाल्लाह 24/7 बेसिस के ऊपर इसके रिस्पॉन्स टाइम चले जाएंगे. थैंक यू कंवल सर.
Thank you so much, sir. Can you guys hear me now clearly? Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Second question is for Barrister Sara Milar. About the constitutional progress and the policies we have, which ensures the safety of individuals who are detained or outside the territory of Pakistan. So, besides the constitutional clauses, is there any on-ground network or plan to help those who are really detained in other countries?
Rukhsar, actually, Barrister Sara, she has left for another meeting, so I fear she won't be able to answer this question. Most of the speakers, they were busy, so they have gone. Only I'm here, Amar Jafri Saab, and Amar Nazir, Dr. Aftab Rizvi, and Sayyid Safi Pirzada. I can see them on the screen. Otherwise, all the other speakers, they have gone because they have other commitments.
Okay, it's all right. Though I had 2 questions for that. There is also one concern that these law enforcement agencies do not have really connection to the development sector within their particular things that are sensitive. There is any way we can incentivize researchers and youth programs within those districts so they know hometown mindset of people prevailing, and it can be great help, I guess, if we involve youth in this and especially incentivize their research.
Sorry? Jafri Saab, did you please hear the question?
Actually, sir, there is some distortion in your voice, but I will try to respond to your question. Actually, as Ahmed said, we need the role of civil society. Since you belong to Gujranwala and the human trafficking networks are working in that part of the region, so I think you can contact FIA, you can contact the right organizations to work together. That's why I'm talking about the national dialogue on organized crimes and its linkage with the cyber world. And actually, your voice is not clear to the participants. So you can get back to Mr. Amin Nazir. And I think that's the right forum you should talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And definitely whenever there are some such like webinars, we will like you people to join and share your ideas for the benefit of the society overall and improvement of law enforcement agencies. Thank you very much, especially Jafisa, for your cooperation and all the hard work you have put in, and your staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.